Hey everyone, welcome back. As you can see, I'm not in my usual studio. I am actually at my parents' visiting them for a wedding this weekend. And one of the things I was thinking about is the last few years after, especially after I turned 50, I started to think about the questions on why my parents acted the way they did. Now, for those of you who follow me, you know that I had a very turbulent childhood growing up in the 80s. And I start to ask myself and try to understand them more. And one of the things I want to find out was why did they treat me the way they did? Why did they act the way they did? And could our relationship have been better? Um, and I also wish that my relationship was better with them. And I think a lot of Gen X who raised themselves as latchkey kids can relate to this and relating to parents being, I guess, emotionally unavailable. I think there's a lot of things that they don't tell you that a lot of the parents probably that raised us in that era, in the 80s, were probably not emotionally available. And they didn't really take the time to try to, I guess, how should I say, understand us more on an intimate level or understand us kids on a more deeper level. And I think sometimes, especially, I can only say from my parents, but they want to forge a more real connection with us. But at times, many times, when it seemed like it was going that way, they would just pull back. And it keeps, wanting, as a child, it keeps you wanting to reach out and want more. And in today's video, I want to talk about how how can we understand our parents better who were not emotionally available, and why they act the way they do, and what kind of effect they had on us as Gen Xers, and how that carried on into our adulthood. So, what was it like to be grown up with parents who were not present emotionally with us? Well, number one, I think it feels very lonely. Um, they were kind of there, but not really there. And I remember just them telling us what to do, where to go, and just keep our mouths shut. But it's not to say that they didn't, uh, that parents didn't pay the bills and feed us and put clothes on our back. But I think when it comes to I guess, soothing a child that's distressed or has some things to get off their chest, they weren't really there. And I can recall an incident when I was a kid and I was playing baseball and I fell on some glass and got cut up pretty bad on my back. And so my coach drove me home and, you know, my mom saw the blood. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to get some sympathy. But my mom started screaming at me and saying, you're not going to play baseball again. And it was almost like it was my fault that I got cut up and fell on some glass and that I had somehow become a burden on her. So I really was shocked that day. And I think it made me feel like, never to ask for anything because it was going to cause me some trouble and it was going to cause her potential pain. And I think when something like that happens, it really affects you when you become an adult. And the second thing about parents who were not emotionally available is when you want to share something important with them, they seem to dismiss it or they'll just talk about themselves. And what you have is not important. And it just seemed like their heart was kind of closed off to, I guess, showing that love, right, in a more emotional way to you. And I remember I remember this very clearly when I was younger. I had won a couple medals, gold medals at a track meet. And I was so excited. I got home and I wanted to tell my parents. I thought they were going to be proud. And the first thing my father said to me was, "Did you lose?" And I was quite shocked about it, taken back. And that day, I just, I don't know really what to think, but I was never quite close to them. And those were one of the incidents that I remember the most. And I just thought, well, how can this be? I thought every parent would be proud of their kids, but I guess not. And the third thing that I noticed from parents who are emotionally unavailable is you start feeling trapped and you get coerced into things that you don't want to do. You know, they use tactics like shaming, guilting, creating fear so that you do what they want you to do, no matter how much it will cost you in your time and your happiness. And if you didn't do it, they got very upset if you didn't follow their demands. And I remember my parents getting really upset because I wanted to go away for college. And I mentioned this at 16. And they were really, really upset with me. And I think a lot of times if you go against their values and so forth, it's considered a no-no. And the other thing that I notice, the fourth thing I notice from parents that are emotionally unavailable is they always feel their needs come first and yours come second. And this can lead to a child feeling insecure because if your parent doesn't have your back, it really plays with your mind. And I remember getting bullied and not being able to tell my parents about any of the incidents because I thought that was just going to add more onto their plate and more worries that they didn't need to have. So I kept a lot of things like that inside, and I knew that I would have to be on my own and take care of myself when trouble arises, right? I think that probably explains why I train the martial arts so diligently and still do to this day, because you're always want to make sure that you are always protected, and because no one's going to come to save you and have your back. The fifth thing that I notice about parents that are not there emotionally for you is they don't respect your boundaries or your individuality. They think, if you reject their requests and that you don't care enough about them, because they feel that if you set boundaries, it's blocking access to your entire life. And I think they get offended by that, because I know when I say to my parents, you got to respect our privacy, at times I can see they get offended by it. And when it comes to individuality, they expect you to have the same beliefs and values and expect you to follow the same advice. But of course, if we go outside of those things, then they get offended about that as well. And even my own thoughts, my private thoughts aren't mine. And I think when you start to do stuff like that, they start to own you because you were their child. Then I think you start to lose emotional control of your life. And all these things really do affect many of us, especially as adults, because you start feeling like, their happiness is your responsibility. And when they get upset, or they're in a bad mood, they blame you for the discomfort. And when you do that, when they start doing that, you start to, I guess, desperately find ways to make it right with them. And their problems end up becoming your problems. And now you find yourself stressed and emotionally drained and questioning yourself and asking yourself, how can you make things better? And I think after living through this, you're always feeling apprehensive because you don't know if you're going to get a phone call in the middle of the night, and it's going to be a emergency that they, or perceived emergency that they just kind of just blow up, and you start becoming emotionally unavailable yourself because you become a dumping ground for their worries and problems. And once you start doing that, you start losing your emotional autonomy, and it's no longer your life. Because I think the one question I always asked myself when I was a younger adult, I always asked myself, well, when is it my time? When is it my time to enjoy? Because it just seemed like I was living life for them the entire time. So I'm curious to hear from all of you. How many of you have gone through this? Did you grow up with a parent that was physically there, but not emotionally there? And what did it teach you to do? Was it to stay quiet? Was it to be responsible? Did you hide your feelings? Did you keep the peace? Or did you need almost nothing? That's not to blame the parents. It's about understanding what we carried as Gen Xers, so we don't have to keep carrying it, especially in our 50s, and we start to live the life that we want. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I'll try to read all the comments. Please feel free to share below. And if you like the content on this channel, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And feel free to check out my next video. And I'll see you next time. Take care.